You're probably wondering why I bothered to take GCSE English Language and Mr. Salles, what grade did you get? I'm going to tell you those things and what I learned from taking the GCSE and then what I'm going to do about it in the future and a special offer for those of you who stick to the end. So let's begin with the why. So I have been wrestling for ages with the problem of AQA. So let's imagine a graph. It's going to look like this. Two simple lines, and at the top we are going to have the most important thing. The most important thing about English, is the exam a proper test of English? Or is it a test of things which people who are really good at English throughout history would value or not value? And I'm going to call that things that just aren't English. They're just stuff in the exam, but it's not something that good writers and good readers would ever want to do. And then across this line, we're going to have whether it's fair or unfair. So what do I mean by unfair? So an unfair question has got things that you need to do which make the question harder, which catch you out, which have nothing to do with being good at English, whereas fair questions, they mean exactly what they say on the tin. You can read the question and it's simple to answer and get right. I would put AQA as not really a proper test of English. There are many examples, but the biggest one is how you're encouraged to do the description question. No writer would write 400 to 500 word descriptions. It's nonsense. I think AQA is just not a proper test of English. I also think there's a way to fail every question that doesn't have anything to do with English. And so I don't think the exam's fair. I think it's unfair. There, at the bottom of my graph. However, in November 2024, I sat the EDEXCEL 2.0 exam, and I think that is a fantastic test of English. I'll mark it on my graph. What happened? I lost just 1 mark across both the papers, and that was fair because I hadn't ever read an exam paper other than once to see if it was any good, and I had never looked at a mark scheme. I'd never practiced. And I still dropped 1 mark because there was one question with one keyword. I forgot about that one keyword and the examiner said, you haven't answered the full question properly, but the rest of your answer is brilliant. We're just going to take 1 mark away. Now, that obviously gave me a grade 9, but it made me think, could I get 100%? Now, my instinct was, if I did the AQA exam, because, back to my graph, it is not English and unfair because it asks you questions which really have got flaws in them all the time, trying to catch you out, I didn't think it was easy to get 100%. There were 3 things that I wanted to discover with AQA. Could I pre-plan a story instead of a description? The advantage of that is students write better stories than they write descriptions. I've got proof of that from AQA. So I had loads of videos giving away stories that students could pre-plan. Yes, the answer was you can pre-plan a story and it works. The second one, points make prizes. So what this means is the reason that most students lose marks on the reading questions is simply that they don't write enough. The methods that they're taught by their teachers are trying to help them to get the grades, but teachers generally don't realise how important volume is. How do I know that? Because I've read every single answer that AQA has ever published that's been marked by a senior examiner. I've counted the words in them, and that is the main difference between one grade and the next. It's just a student writing more, scoring more points. Now, what does a point mean? In the reading questions, a point means it's an explanation. How do you know what an explanation is? If it could begin with "this suggests," it's an explanation. That's an easy way to work it out. So, did the points make prizes method work? I had loads and loads of students contact me, do my courses, and I wrote to them and said, can you tell me what it was that made the difference? And loads of them said, points make prizes. That is what made the difference. But I wondered if I could be more extreme. Whether I could just write "this suggests" all the time and write each explanation on a different line. The reason why I wanted to do that was if you're in the exam and you can see you've written 8 explanations, each one starting on a different line, you know you've got 8 marks. Boom, you can move on to the next question. So I wanted to see if that system, going all in extreme, would work. And the answer is no, that did not work. And partly that was because of what it did to my thinking, and partly was because that just blew the examiner's mind. But let's look at points make prizes first. If your teacher teaches you a technique like this, write a certain number of paragraphs. Your version of a paragraph, my version of a paragraph, the examiner's version of a paragraph could be completely and utterly different, not just in content, but also in length. And typically what students do is they write too little to get the marks. But with points make prizes, you just need to write something that means "this suggests." You'll have lots of variations of your own that you can put in to show that you're explaining an idea. That is going to earn the marks. When you put these words into your paragraphs, the whole answer just flows better. It just feels more like an expert in English. And so using this vocabulary does seem to make it much easier for the examiner to say, hey, this is a student who's good at English. The content of what you write is no better. Like it's a 0 improvement in content, but it's a big improvement in packaging. Similarly, writing all these "this suggests" on different lines, the packaging is all wrong. That just doesn't look right. But when you put it into paragraphs, in paragraphs, the packaging looks right. So my extreme experiment was just too much for the examiner, even though the meaning and the content should be the same. However, I also found that by writing on separate lines all my "this suggests," my content did actually suffer. And it suffered in this way. With paragraphs, you link your ideas together. That's what paragraphs do. You know, one sentence at the beginning of one paragraph links to what you wrote in the previous paragraph, and it creates an argument. When I was writing on separate lines, my argument wasn't always easy for the examiner to follow, and that was my fault. So I am still going to teach this version of points make prizes, and I'm not going to teach my extreme version because it was just too much for the examiner. Here are some fascinating and very relevant facts which will shock you and perhaps shock your teachers. They certainly shock me. So the government has set up an organisation called Ofqual, and their job is to say, look, are the exam boards being fair? We've got to make sure they're fair, awarding the right grades, so you don't get an artificial advantage by doing one exam board instead of the other. That sounds cool, doesn't it? So, bit of a diagram. Ofqual, they're the king or queen of the exam system. They oversee the main exam boards, AQA, OCR, EDEXCEL. For English, 70% of students in the country study AQA. So basically, AQA kind of dictates the grade that most students in the country get, which you can see for me is a problem because I think it's a rubbish exam. There is another problem. Ofqual carried out some research. They said, well, how accurate are English examiners anyway? Like Do we trust them? And they tested English examiners and examiners in every subject. And you won't be surprised that in maths, they were 99% right. In English, for your overall English grade, there is only a 54% chance that you got the right grade. And when we come down into the actual question, what's the chance that one question was given the right grade? It's 50%. A coin toss. That is trained examiners. Your teachers are likely to be even less accurate. Now that is appalling. It's a scandal, isn't it? But the exam board get away with it because Ofqual have given them a free pass. And the free pass is this. If the examiner could have given the wrong grade, but they could reasonably have given the wrong grade, we'll let that grade stand. So even though 46% of the time the grade's wrong, most of those times, all the exam boards say, yeah, well, it was reasonable though, reasonable mistake. So that tells us why the packaging was so important. This is why what your answer looks like plays such a heavy role in your grade, even though the content of your answer will be the same. And that's why I come back to the idea that the points make prizes has to work in paragraphs with the right vocabulary, not just this suggests. But now things get really juicy. What grade did I get? Now before I answer that, let's just take a logical thought. If you had a science teacher or a maths teacher or a Spanish teacher taking the exam, 100% of maths graduates would ace a GCSE maths exam. 100% of Spanish teachers would ace the Spanish exam, and the same for science. It's obvious. And yet with English, we have doubts, don't we? We think, oh, no, maybe someone with a degree in English wouldn't get 100%. Now, how is that logically possible? It is because AQA has infected English classrooms. They've created an exam which is so bad that there is a realistic chance that someone with a degree in the subject wouldn't get a grade 9. Like, that has no logic to it other than the AQA exam is awful and the marking is worse. So what happened to me? I took the AQA exam and I came away with a grade 8. This should be impossible for anyone with an English degree. It should be doubly impossible for someone who's been teaching English for 28 years. And yet, that is the grade I've got. Imagine a student at school getting a grade 8. What are the chances that they would ask for a remark? Well, almost no one would ask for a remark if they've got a grade 8. It's really hard to get. But obviously, I asked for a remark and AQA remarked it and gave me a grade 9. You would think that I would be happy about this. But no. Remember I told you that Ofqual says 50% of questions are marked with a wrong grade and 46% of your language grades will be wrong. Does that lead to 30 or 40% of students and teachers saying, hey, we need a remark? No, it doesn't. Because lots of people think, oh, well, I could have just done badly. I just missed by a grade. And most people therefore accept their wrong grade. However, 11% of OCR students say no, that's not the right grade, I'm going to ask for a remark. 10% of EDEXCEL do the same. But AQA, which remember is most of the country, only 7.4% ask. So why is that? Is it that AQA just mark loads better? Well, no, you've just seen the difference between EDEXCEL, where I lost 1 mark, and AQA, where I lost a ton of marks on the first mark and ended up with a grade 8. No, AQA is not more accurate. And if you talk to AQA examiners, they'll say, yeah, people didn't check up on my marks like they used to in the past. They're less accurate. So why don't more people ask for a remark? It's because of the climate of fear in school. AQA, when you ask for a remark, make a big deal of the fact that your grade could go up, but it could go down. So what's the percentage of grades that actually do go down? Well, I'll actually draw this in the air for you. Watch out for my decimal point. Yes, you read that right. 0.1%. 1,000 students ask for a remark. One of those students will go down a grade. That is not worth a massive warning. Ooh, your grade might go down. It's worth a little warning. It's worth having that statistic in the paperwork. But AQA make a massive deal of your grade can go down. And because English teachers who teach AQA know it's such a horrible exam, they also fear, yes, my student might have missed something because of the method for this question and the method for that question. And it's really difficult to remember all these blinking methods for every question. And so the teachers live in fear and the parents live in fear. And that's why only 7.4% ask for a remark. But then it gets much worse, because what happens when you ask for your remark? OCR say, yep, 31% of you have been given the wrong mark. We're putting your mark up. At EDEXCEL, they go, yep, 36% of you deserve an extra mark. AQA, 16%. They're like 50% more stingy than the other exam boards. Why? Because they need to hold on to their 70% market share. If teachers suddenly realise that AQA is not marking properly, well, then they've got no incentive to stay with AQA, or at least a smaller incentive to stay with AQA. And so AQA arrange it so that far fewer marks will go up, and therefore people will feel, oh, AQA is like the gold standard, we've got to stay with them. So what next? Well, I can pay loads more money to appeal, to ask for more marks. But AQA can argue, look, you got a grade 9, so obviously the marks that we gave you weren't unreasonable, which is, in a way, a fair point. So they don't have to move my marks up at all. But also, they will take months to do it. So there's no incentive for me or for a student to go to appeal. There's no incentive at all. So hardly anyone does it. Where does that leave me? It leaves me with an experiment and a fantastic offer. So I'm going to make the way to sign up for this offer in my Substack newsletter. I send a newsletter out every week with top grade answers in it for language and literature for you to revise from, with all my commentary as why it gets the marks. It's totally free. All you have to do is sign up. In the newsletter, in a few weeks' time, I'm going to advertise for students. You will be limited. I only want 10 students. I've got hold of a senior examiner, and I'm going to pay that examiner to mark your writing. And what I'm going to do is this. I'll take each question, because as you know, some of the questions are changing for 2026. And after this, I'm going to hotfoot it and make those videos for the new changes. But instead of recommending one method, I am going to try 2 different methods for each question. I'm going to teach those 2 different methods one at a time to these 10 volunteers. And so they'll say, right, here is question 2 on paper 1, the Mr. Salles method. Now here's an exam paper. You've got 8 marks, which means there are 12 minutes. Boom. Write it in 12 minutes. Send it to me now. We're all together on a Zoom. You send that answer to me. I give it to the senior examiner to mark. But then I say, right, here's another exam paper, and this is Mr. Salles' method number 2. Teach you that method, and then again you get your 12 minutes to write your answer, send it in, Mr. Salles sends it off to the senior examiner, we get that marked. Then we find out for you which method works best for you, but also hopefully an indication of which method works best for more people. And then that's the method that I will use in my videos on YouTube. We will do that with all the language questions. So you will only sign up if you will be prepared to commit to writing every single time and getting those marks back. You need to sign up to my Substack, and then I will release details and dates in my Substack in a few weeks' time, and you can help me work out how to defeat and conquer AQA. Links in the description. In the next video, which will be one of the changes to 2026 language AQA, what's my advice today?